All right, let's talk about one of the most famous stories to ever come out of Greek mythology, the myth of Icarus. Now, it's a tale that pretty much everyone thinks they know, right? But what if I told you the way we usually tell it leaves out half of the actual lesson? Let's dive in and unpack this.
Yeah, don't fly too close to the sun. We've all heard it a million times. It's become this go-to warning against getting too ambitious, a classic tale about the dangers of reaching too high. But what if that's only part of the story? What if that's only half the warning?
Because there was another warning. Icarus's father, Daedalus, gave him a second piece of advice, one that almost always gets left out of the story. And honestly, understanding that forgotten warning is the key to unlocking what this myth is really trying to tell us. Okay, so to really get these warnings, we've got to set the scene. The whole story kicks off with a pretty desperate situation, a genius inventor and an escape plan that is, well, equal parts brilliant and incredibly dangerous.
So here's the deal. We've got our main characters, Daedalus, who's this master craftsman, a total genius, and his son Icarus. They're locked up in a tower on the island of Crete. King Minos has them trapped, and there's just no way out by land or by sea. So, Daedalus does the only thing he can. He looks up.
And this is where his genius really shines. He comes up with this incredible solution. Using all his skill, he starts collecting feathers and meticulously fastens them together with thread and wax. And just like that, he creates 2 pairs of wings. An escape through the sky is actually possible. But, and this is a big but, it comes with some very, very specific rules. And right here, this is the absolute heart of the myth. This is the instruction that contains the entire lesson. It wasn't just some vague, hey, be careful up there. No, it was a very precise 2-part warning.
Okay, so before they jump, Daedalus lays it all out for Icarus. He gives him 2 warnings, and they're basically 2 sides of the same coin. First, you've got the famous one. Don't fly too high. If you get too close to the sun, the heat will melt the wax and your wings will fall apart. But then he says, and don't fly too low either. Why? Because the dampness, the mist from the sea, will soak the feathers, making them so heavy you won't be able to fly at all.
You see? This is the whole point. This is the real insight of the myth. The instruction was all about finding what's called the middle way. Success and, survival wasn't just about not being reckless. It was about finding that perfect path right between 2 different kinds of failure.
So instructions given, they take the leap. They launch themselves from the tower and they're flying. The escape is on. But you have to imagine what this is like, especially for a young kid. The feeling of flight, it's just completely overwhelming.
Icarus is just blown away. He's totally intoxicated by the thrill of it all. I mean, think about it. You're soaring above the world. You're finally free from that prison tower. He feels powerful, invincible. He feels like a god. And in that pure moment of joy, all those careful warnings from his dad just start to fade into the background.
His father, Daedalus, sees what's happening. He's yelling. He's crying out warnings to his son, but Icarus is completely lost in the moment. He can't hear him, or maybe he just doesn't want to. All he wants is to go higher and higher, to push the boundaries, to chase that incredible godlike feeling.
And the result? Well, it's as fast as it is tragic. The sun's heat does exactly what his father said it would. It melts the wax. The wings just disintegrate. Feathers scatter everywhere. Icarus is flapping his bare arms, but there's nothing there, nothing to catch the air. And he just plummets, falling out of the sky and crashing into the sea below, a sea that would forever after be called the Icarian Sea, named after him.
It's a really heartbreaking story when you think about it. But its real power, the reason we're still talking about it thousands of years later, is because of the lessons it teaches us about, well, us, about human nature. So, what exactly are those lessons? Well, you can really break down the wisdom of this whole story into 3 main takeaways. And honestly, each one of them is a pretty powerful guide for our own lives.
Okay, lesson number 1, hubris. It's a great word. Basically, it means excessive, dangerous pride. It's that fatal flaw you see in a ton of Greek tragedies. And here's the key. Icarus's big mistake wasn't his ambition. It wasn't that he wanted to fly. It was that moment of pure bliss when he started to feel like a god. And he thought the rules, the physical limits of his fragile wax and feather wings, just didn't apply to him anymore. He forgot he was human, and that mistake cost him everything.
All right, lesson number 2. And this brings us right back to that forgotten warning, the absolute necessity of balance. The ancient Greeks actually had a word for this, sophrosine,
which is all about moderation and self-control. See, the myth is teaching us that success isn't just about not flying too high. It's also about not flying too low. It's about finding that sweet spot between two different ways to fail. On one hand, you've got the spectacular crash and burn of flying too high. But on the other, you have the quiet, unseen failure of flying too low, where the damp mist of being too cautious, too scared keeps you from ever really getting off the ground in the first place. That is the real core of this story.
And finally, number 3, heeding wisdom. At its heart, this story is about the classic struggle between youthful impulse and hard-won experience. Think about it. Daedalus wasn't trying to be a buzzkill. He wasn't trying to ruin his son's fun. He was trying to give him the wisdom, the map that he needed to survive the flight. So Icarus's fall isn't just about some kid who wouldn't listen. It's a timeless story about how the thrill of the now can sometimes make us completely forget the lessons of the past.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. We always remember the story of Icarus as a warning, right? A cautionary tale about a boy who flew too high. But how often do we stop and think about the other warning? How often do we stop ourselves from flying too low? We're also worried about the spectacular failure of flying too close to the sun. But maybe, just maybe, the far more common tragedy is letting the fear of failure keep us from ever really spreading our wings in the first place.